Society has a difficult task figuring out what to do with labels. It's becoming very, very politically incorrect to label people, to profile people, and for many good reasons. People ought not to be profiled or judged as to their life by a few external things. And yet it is one of the easiest ways to kind of make sense of the world. As children are born and grow up, like little infant Carl, he's learning little by little to label things, to find out what the names for things are. Mom, Dad, and then all the rest afterwards. And we continue to learn how to look at something and assess it and know if there's a name for it or not. But of course, it can become very dangerous if we simply take a cursory look at something and then decide that we know something about, especially another person, interiorly. As a matter of fact, it's one of the worst violations that we can do on a spiritual, as well as a moral, even a civil level, is to think we know what is in the interiors of another person based on exteriors. In the writings for the new church, there is a statement made concerning judgments. It says simply that if you are, in your internals, the way you appear to be by your externals, then I can make an assessment that you are heaven-bound or not. Well, whose job is it to decide who is heaven-bound to begin with? It's the Lord's, not ours. And yet we are all, each, called upon to put our trust in, to invest our lives in, to be in association with other people, and we must assess and decide, based on whatever we can, whether we want to throw our lot in with this or that person, group, community, city, tribe, nation, culture, or church. Now, baptism is a specific act. It's one of the two sacraments in the new church, a specific act that specifically is doing exactly what I've been talking about. It is labeling a child as a Christian. This child, we're told, is enrolled and numbered among those who in the spiritual world, and we're all in the spiritual world, so among those in the church as well, or those in the world, enrolled and numbered, recognized as a Christian. So during the baptismal service, the child, or an adult as well, receives the sign of the cross with the waters of baptism on the forehead and on the chest, representing the first of the two uses of baptism, the introduction and instruction of the mind or the intellect, the things of knowledge, understanding, and then the introduction of the will, the things of the heart. So baptism is a labeling of a child or an adult, if one is baptized as an adult, a labeling that you are a Christian. You are saying, I want a new name. I will receive a Christian name. And we refer to that as a person's Christian name. What's your Christian name? My name's Michael. What's your Christian name? Barbara. What's your Christian name? Stephen. What's your Christian name? James. What's your Christian name? Jerry. We receive Christian names. And many times in the life of the church in the past, people wouldn't tell anybody else what the name of their newborn child was until that moment when the child is baptized. And then for the first time publicly, the child is named before the Lord, before the congregation. And that's when people find out the name of this little baby. It's an old tradition. Some people still might maintain it. This child is now enrolled and numbered. But we have to ask ourselves, because I'm now speaking to you grown-ups who I will then be inviting to come forward to the Holy Supper. We have to ask ourselves, has that name stuck? When you think about your name, Do you have a Christian name? I don't know all of you. I don't know what your names all are. I don't know. Mostly I know. But maybe your second or third name I don't. You have a Christian name? Is that who you are? Is that who you are? You've been labeled, maybe you haven't been, but let's assume, for the sake of the sermon, that the Christians here, who may or may not have been named or labeled, when a baptism takes place, that label is placed upon you. If you're not baptized, would you like to be? Grown-ups can be baptized as well. The point is, baptism is an intentional statement that parents make. The first thing that's said to the parents is, you hereby enter into a solemn covenant with the Lord. By this baptism, by bringing your child forward, will you teach them the things of heaven? Will you teach them how to pray? Will you teach them to shun evils as sins? You've entered into a solemn covenant. And when I meet with a couple, parents, I say to them, have you ever made any solemn covenants? And they'll think, oh, I'm not sure. And the husband will look at the wife, and the wife will look at the husband. Yeah, we got married. Yeah, we got married. We made a solemn covenant to the Lord when we got married. I said, yes, you did. And now, as a married couple, the use you're performing as a married couple now, high, very, very high use, is to enter again into a solemn covenant together to raise this child as a Christian. To teach this child the things of the Scriptures, to teach them how to pray, to teach them how to shun evils as sins. 3 simple things, right? Any parent knows they're not so simple. Because every child, like every grown-up, they're individual. They all take special treatment. If you have more than one child, the first thing the older one learns how to do is to say, that's not fair. You didn't let me do that when I was his age. It's all done individually. And so you're given a name. A child is given a name at baptism. And we're told it has what you might almost consider, I hesitate to use the word magical. It has correspondentially powerful effects in the natural, but especially in the spiritual world. Because we're living in both worlds at the same time, our spirits are in the other world, and we're under the influence or surrounded by the influence, as we are in the natural world, of all manner of value systems, of thought systems, of behavioral systems. And we're told that baptism, one of the effects of baptisms, is that while doing the putting of the cross, the water on the forehead and chest, it actually, in the spiritual world, marks that child as a Christian. And then the influence of other spirits, influence of other spiritual communities, that child is known to be a Christian, according then to the Christianity in that child and around that child. There's a protection. The Lord set up baptism to mark us as His own. Each one of us, there ought to be a sense of spiritual pride that we're the Lord's. Whose are we? We're the Lord's. Who are we as a people? We're the Lord's people. Who are we as a church? We're the Lord's church. We want to be the Lord's. The couple asked if they could have the 23rd Psalm read. Well, what's that a psalm about? The Lord is our shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord, one shepherd with a flock. And we know you can't be a very good shepherd unless you know which ones are your sheep and which ones aren't, unless you know that one of your sheep is missing. And so the Lord used that analogy of His sheep. If one goes missing, He'll go after that one and rejoice and call His friends together to say, rejoice with me, I found my little lost lamb. This child is enrolled and numbered. We are the Lord's sheep. We belong to the Lord. Baptism is a way that the Lord, again, I hate to use certain words because they carry such connotation. The Lord brands us. Not that kind of branding like a cow, but the kind of branding that says we're his. What brand of person are you? I'm a Christian. Can you say I'm a Christian because I've been baptized or I wish to follow the Lord's teachings? And maybe you aren't. But in baptism, that's the statement that's made, is this is a kind of branding. We talk more about branding in other ways now. McDonald's is marking its 50th anniversary. As soon as I say that, you might see the great branding McDonald's did, those golden arches a long time ago. Can't miss them. Many children actually know how to read that before they can read letters and start going, ah, if you have brought them up eating that, and you may regret that you did, or you might think that's a great way to teach. But that kind of imagery, that kind of branding, that kind of symbols, the symbol of the cross on the forehead of the child is a form, spiritually speaking, to say this child is the Lord's. What brand of person, if you can have such a thing, this is a Christian belonging to the Lord's church. It's very important to think about being a member of the Lord's heaven and the Lord's community. Very important for us to identify. Many people go through the world and they begin to feel lonely or isolated because they feel like they don't belong anywhere. A lot of people are searching for a sense of meaning to their lives. Where do I really belong? One of the first things that is done in baptism is that marking, that sign of the cross, and it says to all of us, we belong with the rest of the Lord's people. We ought to be participating in a community where we can help other people feel welcome and belonging, and where we ourselves can feel like we contribute, have something to give from the Lord to this community. Because heaven is the kingdom of uses, like the church. The kingdom of uses. What can we do to help others? Right after the service, you're going to be invited to go outside, and you're going to be blowing bubbles. It's a way to remember somebody. I'm going to let Catherine Jutras tell you about that later on after the service. And then afterwards, we're going to be invited to come downstairs and be part of the celebration of this baptismal event. You're invited. You're marked. You're here. You're asked to join. Baptism itself is a very similar thing. You're marked. You're invited. You're asked to join. Jesus, when he offered the Holy Supper, that evening he did a number of things. And when he did the Holy Supper, he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Something to remember the Lord by. We're all in the True Christian Religion number 671, that when the Lord was baptized, we're told he did this baptism, he had himself baptized in order that he might institute or begin baptism as a sign and a ritual to say you belong to this group. It replaced circumcision, which was used among the Jewish nation and the Jewish church, and now it's baptism for Christians. He also did this, we're told, because it says he set an example. He set an example. Do this in remembrance of me. I have given you an example that you ought to do this. Baptism is one of those examples which the Lord himself did, as well as the Holy Supper. The lesson that was read from the lectern talked about there being two universal and no other universal gates to heaven than the baptism and the Holy Supper. And the baptism as a first gate is an introduction that a person may know and acknowledge the Lord God Jesus Christ, that they may be instructed and may come to see who the Lord is. They're introduced to the church, and then they may be regenerated. But it doesn't guarantee regeneration. Neither does the Holy Supper. So that universal gate into the church, the marking, the statement, you are now a Christian. And then it says there's a long plain, as it were, a long meadow, a long field, a long course between that first introduction to the church and the final introduction to the church. Holy Supper is a representative, when you take Holy Supper, you don't instantly go to heaven. We certainly don't want that to happen right now here. So stay with us. You're not instantly introduced into heaven, nor are you spiritually speaking, except if you will of your heart to be in heaven. And that's what the Holy Supper represents, is a desire to confirm the statement made at your baptism that you are a Christian, to confirm that by the intentionality to do the Lord's will, to know about His Word, and to follow His instruction. Amen.